Right, we've just seen Jim fish his spring period, and I'd like to take a few minutes now just to go over a few bits and pieces on how I approach the water in the spring and pick up on a few bits and pieces that may be beneficial to you. Spring's a good time of the year for me. I love the spring. The fish have just woken up after their winter lull, and it's a good time to get out there and catch them when they're at big weights. As the fish wake up from their winter lull and start moving about the lake, they'll be trying to replenish and get themselves ready for what lies ahead, one of the most important times of their life, the spawning period. The time that the carp spawn depends on the nature of the lake. If it's a deep lake, then sometimes it carries on right into the June-July time of the year, and obviously well out of the spring period. At this time of the year, it's a good time to be up at all hours of the night and early morning, keeping an ear out and watching for their telltale signs. Try and find out the places where they're visiting. And also in the daytime, you must have your glasses with you, because I think you'd be lost without them. As they visit the snags, I'll try and get in amongst the trees and watch, and make sure that they are visiting them snags every day. And then I'll put some bait in, not too much to start with, and I'll use a boilie, because I think it's the best food source you can give them at this time once they've just woken up. There's everything in there they need, and the carp know this. So once they start visiting these snags, one of the reasons they'll be going in there is to absorb the sun. Late afternoon, you'll quite often find fish sitting in the snags early spring, absorbing the sun's rays, taking in as much as they can, just trying to replenish themselves after their winter lull. And in these places, I'll be trying to frequently watch them and put in a small amount of bait to begin with, and try and build up a feeding pattern. And once this is established, that's when I'll eventually put a rod in them areas and hopefully produce a carp. As the water starts to warm up day by day, the fish will start visiting other areas of the lake, and eventually will start getting into groups. And at this time they may be feeding a little bit more competitive, and that's where a little tip is to maybe tip your hook bait with something yellow, i.e. a little piece of artificial corn. It tends to work really well at this time of the year, because if they're moving around in shoals and they're a little bit competitive, it's going to prove to produce a bite fairly quick. They're going to be swimming around and maybe competing against the fish that's swimming alongside it. So anything tipped with a bit of yellow, or even a yellow pop-up, seems to work well at this time of year. As the fish move through the weed, they'll be keeping an eye out, and hopefully they'll see a little bit like that and they'll be straight on it. As we move further and further into the spring, the water's going to warm up each day, and as it does, with that the weed will start to grow. And as it starts to grow, the fish will start to look for these areas. There's a lot of natural food in these areas and the fish love it. So a good pointer would be to try and find a nice little spot that you fancy near one of these weed beds. At this time of the year, I'd also pay quite a lot of attention to the margins and also the trees. I'm always up and down the trees, keeping a good eye out. You get a good vantage point up there with your glasses on, and it'll give away a lot of their secrets, a lot of their movements and a lot of their habits. So a good thing to do is get back out of the way so they can't see you, and sit and watch, and you'll learn everything by doing that, and also it'll catch you a few fish. As the fish start to group up getting ready to spawn, you'll find that they have areas that they tend to visit quite often. And on particular lake I've fished before, there's a pipe inlet, and the fish just love it in this area. They tend to group up. It's more like a social area, and they do group up in this area, and they leave in great big gangs, going in and out of this swim all day long. It's a good spot to try and catch them or ambush them on their way in and out. The female fish, all they seem to want to do is get rid of their spawn, so they're a bit reluctant to pick a bait up, but the males do tend to drop and have a little feed, so that'll be your chance. As it goes on further and further, getting towards the time when they are going to spawn, I find it pretty difficult to catch anything, especially on the lakes I've fished recently. All they want to do is group up and do their thing. Just to summarise on the spring period, it's a great time for you to get out there and catch a fish. They've just woke up from their winter period, and they're really up for it. They love a bit of grub at this time. So once you've found your little spots, start introducing the bait, and I'm sure it'll produce the goods. Look for the shallow, warm areas, like snags where the sun reaches, and the fish are up in the higher levels. You can observe them, so make sure you've got your sunglasses on. Get out there and catch a whacker.